So give me an example from your own life, or your own kind of creative life, where constraint has been valuable to you and pushed you to, or your agency or a business or an idea you've been involved with pushed you to a kind of further stage than you've got to.
Okay, well, Oxfam wanted to talk once to everybody in advertising, all the top people, about the third world debt, and which is debt taken on by the third world, very similar to the financial crash that happened. Banks were incentivized to loan money to the third world without worrying whether it could be paid back or not. Your bonuses were all geared on how many loans you got out, not whether there was any collateral. So eventually, the third world couldn't pay back these loans. So then you had the IMF introduced austerity measures, and you had the third world debt. And UNICEF estimated that the third world debt was responsible, and these austerity measures were responsible for 500,000 child deaths a year. That's children under age 5. Oxfam couldn't do anything about it because it's a political issue, not a charitable issue. It's not about giving money, it's about changing the law. It's about changing the law to get banks. Banks have put aside money for these debts in case they can't get repaid. But meanwhile, they haven't had to write that money. They haven't had to write the debts off, so they can keep collecting interest on the money they put aside, and keep collecting interest off the third world from these debts they haven't collected. So what you politically want to happen, what Oxfam said they wanted to happen, was either write the debts off or declare the money and pay interest on it. But either way, what's happening at the moment isn't fair. And they said, we can't do anything, but we want to tell everybody in advertising about it. I thought, this is great. This is what I went to art school for. This is using advertising for good.
Yeah.
Now we can actually use our brains. There is no client, no money, no nothing. We can actually use our brains. We want to get into banks, and we want to harm banks. We want to change the attitude of the banks inside the banks.
Right.
But how do we get inside the banks? And we were talking about this one night, brainstorming about it. How do we get inside the banks? There is no media. Not if we've got no money, even if we did have. There's no radio, there's no TV, there's no posters inside banks. How do we get inside banks?
Yeah.
And we were talking about it, and we thought, there is no media. And we thought, well, hang on. There's something we could use as media. Banks deal in a lot of paper. They deal in a lot of currency. And if you deface currency, it's illegal to deface currency. And if you deface it, it has to be taken out of circulation. And in taking it out of circulation, they have to fill in forms in quintuplicate, which goes to 5 departments, each of which has to fill in forms in quintuplicate, because they don't let you take money out of circulation lightly in case it disappears. So every time we deface a banknote, that goes into the banks, and it reproduces itself 25 times inside the bank to different departments.
Right.
So if we all did that, and what we all began doing, and I still do it, if we all did that to our currency, we can have the banks reproducing our message inside the banks themselves.
Right.
Can you read that? Stop banks killing children, cancel the third world debt. Yeah?
Brilliant. So you stamp every single note that you have?
I do, and I mean, I must have stamped, I don't know, 500,000, 250,000 over the years, but it works better on the 20s than it does on 10s and 5s. They
more space.
They kindly left us a nice white space.
Yeah, excellent.
And it's great. I go into shops and people say to me, "Oh, there's some writing on this," and I say, "Yeah, I don't know, it was on there when I got it." Yeah. And sometimes I'll go in the shop and they hand me money back that's been stamped at someone else that's been actually circulated.
Really?
But the object is to get it into the banks and get the banks to reproduce it. And what I like about that is we not only wrote our own brief, we created our own media, and all for nothing. Everything about that is for nothing. So if we would just stop all being so boringly civil service, bureaucratic, and start being as we were when advertising started to be exciting, let's get back to being creative. Let's get back to breaking the rules. Let's get back to being naughty as a good thing.
Right.
Let's get back to the whole point is to be controversial, to get into trouble. Not the whole point is not to get into trouble. Controversy means people are talking about it. That's free media. We haven't paid for that. We can generate 5 million into 10, 20 million by that. You know, the whole point nowadays seems to be to spend the money without anybody talking about it. So, and the only people you want to talk about it is some awards jury who hasn't got a single consumer on it. So it's totally decadent, and it's advertising people talking to advertising people about advertising. And we've totally left 55 million people out of the loop, and that's our free media. And that's, for all the talk about going viral, it doesn't really go viral. It doesn't go viral. What makes it go viral is 55 million little units of this, and it doesn't do that. It just wins some meaningless awards somewhere, and you get, and that's kind of, so it's not just planners. That's the creative side of it that's also decadent and corrupt. Well, no, corrupt's the wrong word. I think corrupt might be the wrong word, but certainly decadent and effete.
So who is doing it well now, given that the world by and large is...
Yeah, that's a really good question. That I don't know. Recently, the only thing I saw that I've admired and wished I did, it's not even an ad I like, but I saw the results, was the one for Money Supermarket, where the guy's dressed in tights and suspenders walking down the street. I don't even like the ad, but what I love was my wife was watching breakfast TV, and on breakfast TV they came on there saying, look, here's the front page of The Sun with a clipping. They've taken a clipping of this Money Supermarket and put George Osborne's head on it and said, epic budget, Chancellor. Now, not only can you not buy the front page of The Sun, you can't buy the news section of TVAM, and I then go into the bathroom, turn on BBC, and Chris Evans is talking about it on the radio. You can't buy BBC radio news. All of these places you can't buy, you got into with a really good, outrageous, controversial idea, and little kids in the street saying, "Ooh, you're so Money Supermarket, Dave," and all that's free media. That's like 10 or 15 million quid of the free media you generated by using your loaf, instead of the gold standard should be to get into trouble, to get people doing it, to create controversy, to get on the front page of The Sun. That should be what we're aiming at, not to win some dozy little awards down in the south of France.